It's 7 o'clock, time for our regularly scheduled meeting. Mike, will you call the roll, please?
Collier-Wise, Helwig, Holland, Humphrey, Price, Sorensen,
Here.
Ward, Wilson, Helwig, Mayor Powell.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3 are minutes for July 15th special meeting and July 15th regular meeting. Second. A motion and a second to approve both sets of minutes as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Adoption of the agenda. John or Mike, any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Under visitors to be heard, addressing the council. Persons addressing the council shall use the microphone at the podium. Please raise your hand to be recognized, go to the podium, and state your name and address. For items that are not on the agenda, members of the public may speak under visitor to be heard on any topic not on the agenda. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes, and no decision will be made at this time. For agenda items, public testimony will be taken at the beginning of each agenda item after the subject has been announced by the mayor and explained by staff. Any citizen who wishes may speak one time for 5 minutes on each agenda item. Public testimony will then be closed and the topic will be given to the governing body for possible action. At this point, only City Council members and staff may discuss the current agenda item unless a council member moves to allow another person to speak and there's unanimous consent from the council. Questions from council members, however, may be directed to staff or a member of the public through the presiding officer at any time. Is there anyone in the audience that has a topic that's not on the agenda that they wish to bring forward at this time? Seeing none, anyone on the council with something that's not on the agenda? Yes.
Hey, Vermillion, South Dakota, Midwest All-Pro Wrestling Freedom Value Center of Vermillion, IGDOMI Inc., BTCWrestling.com, and Brink of Sanity Pro Wrestling Podcast are working with the Vermillion Food Pantry to collect non-perishable food items August 30th at the Vermillion National Guard Armory. Goodwill donation can be dropped off with Teresa McDowell at the Food Pantry VCC building. Thank you in advance. Let's slam out hunger. You can get tickets for the event at MidwestAllPro.com. Our mission is to slam out hunger. And the really cool thing about this event is that it helps out the food pantry and it features local wrestlers and a referee with Vermillion area ties.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll turn to public hearings. Item A, off-street parking variance request for Vermillion Madison Park Apartments 2 LLC at 411 North Norbeck Street. And this is a development to be constructed at the northeast corner of North Norbeck Street and Roosevelt Street. And James, please.
Thank you. On June 25th, 2019, the city received a petition for a variance from Mr. Benjamin Eide representing Madison Park Apartments number 2 LLC with regard to off-street parking requirements at 411 North Norbeck. The off-street parking requirements are set forth in City Code 155.02. In March 2018, Ordinance 1367, which is the current ordinance, eliminated garages from counting as off-street parking spaces. Per this ordinance, the applicant for this particular build would need to provide 100 off-street parking spots. The applicant reports the plans for the building currently include up to 40 garages with up to 43 driveway-type parking spots. And if you therefore subtract 43 driveways from the 100 required spots, the applicant would need to provide 57 additional parking spots. The applicant is asking for the parking requirements to be calculated using the method applied when Vermillion Madison Park Apartments 1 were built in 2015. While the building permit has not been submitted, staff understands that the applicant intends to build a very similar type development, basically a twin building, with the second development as with the first from 2015. So under that method, the method that the applicant is requesting, which is the prior method, the applicant would still need to provide 100 off-street spots but the garages would count towards meeting a portion of that requirement. So if the 40 garages were counted as one spot each and the driveways were counted as one spot each, then ultimately the applicant would need to provide 17 additional parking spots, or a minimum of 17. The applicant proposes providing a minimum of 40 attached garages, 40 driveways, and 22 surface spots for a total of 112 off-street parking spots if the driveways are included. In your packet is a copy of the petition, parking study that the applicant completed, and the city engineer's timeline of events. So you'll see on the next page, there's the current requirements, which were adopted, I think the second reading was in February of 2018. As you probably know by now, Section 155.100 gives the City Council, acting as the Board of Adjustment, the power to hear and decide variances to very strict application of the height, area, setback, yard, parking, density requirements, etc., as long as they are not contrary to the public interest. So for purposes of these regulations, public interest shall include the interests of the public at large within the city, not just neighboring property owners. And the burden is on the applicant to provide the need for the variance. The following issues are to be considered, each and all of them, as determining factors in whether or not the issuance of a variance is justified per Section 155.100. Those conditions would be an unnecessary hardship, resulting in basically there can be no feasible use of the property. Convenience, loss of profit, financial limitations, or self-imposed hardship shall not be considered as grounds for approving a variance by the Board of Adjustment. Literal interpretation of the chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district. The variance requested is the minimum variance that would alleviate a hardship. Granting of the variance would comply with the general purpose and intent of this chapter and will not be offensive to adjacent areas or to the public welfare. No conforming use or structure in the same district and no permitted or non-conforming use or structure in other districts shall be considered grounds for the issuance of a variance. Exceptional and extraordinary circumstances apply to the property that do not apply to other properties in the same zone or vicinity and result from lot size, shape, topography, or other circumstances that are not due to the applicant's, not attributed to the applicant in any way. So in order to preserve the intent of these zoning regulations and to protect public interest, the Board of Adjustment may attach conditions to the variance. Variance shall remain valid only as long as the property owner complies with the terms and conditions of the variance as provided by the Board of Adjustment. I look at it as staff's role to give the council, acting as Board of Adjustment, the strict interpretation of what the city code says. A strict interpretation of the ordinance as written would result in the city council denying the petition and uphold the requirements set forth in Section 155.02 off-street parking. We have Mr. ID here from Vermillion Madison Park Apartments 1 and 2. If the board has any questions, or
I just won 102 spots, not 112.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, James. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this topic at this time? Yes, please.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for hearing me tonight. My name is Ben Ide. I'm the Director of Development for Hahn Development. We're the company making the request for the variance tonight. Let me give a little history on the project there. We developed Phase 1, Madison Park Townhomes, which is immediately south of the Phase 2 site, and we did that under the old parking requirements. When we started developing Phase 2, which will be immediately south of Roosevelt, we did conceptual drawings and submitted plans and applications to the South Dakota Housing Development Authority. Actually, John in this body helped us with a neighborhood plan as part of that application. And our conceptual drawings included parking that was similar to what was included in Phase 1. This was back in 2017. Zoning code changed I understand it was adopted early 2018, and that, of course, affected our development plans and brought us to this point. The reason for the variance, or the reason I think the council should give consideration to the variance, is the spirit of the code. The reason the code was changed, the reason the parking requirements were changed to begin with. And James, feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the parking requirements were beefed up because of a lot of student housing, for one. Most students have a vehicle, so one bedroom, one vehicle. I also understand there were some garages built that were included in the parking count, but then were used for other purposes, for owner purposes, things like that, that weren't really reserved for parking. Our garages, really what it boils down to is the garages. Will you count the garage as a parking space in this request? Our garages are attached to each unit, so there's no exterior access for an owner such as myself to try to use one of those garages. The garages are included as part of rent, so we don't charge anything extra from us. If you rent a unit, you get a garage. Our units are also family developments. In fact, the program that we're developing under is a federal program, and it has strict limitations on student households. So we can't rent to exclusively student households. So those are things that I think that you should consider in, if you look at a strict interpretation, as James said, you're basically gonna devalue an amenity that a lot of people appreciate in Vermillion. You're devaluing a garage that's used for its legitimate intended purpose, not used to skirt a parking requirement, but is used as a genuine amenity for tenants. And I think the code, as written, a strict interpretation of the code, discourages what is otherwise a very attractive amenity. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak? Any questions for Mr. Iye? Tom?
Thank you. I appreciate your being here. Did you come all the way from Michigan?
I sure did.
Well, thank you for making the trip.
Thanks for having me.
I can see allowing, in a case like this, the garages as parking spaces, given the situation. But I've got a lot of other questions that I'm really not sure about. I mean, you had noticed that after March 22nd, you were going to need to do something. And what you're doing, rather than adjusting the apartments or adjusting something else, is saying, here's what I want a variance for the parking, so I don't have to change anything else. I don't think that makes this a total unreasonable restriction. It's not a taking, like you can't do anything with this property under the Constitution. That would be a taking. So I'm wondering if you looked at these dates. I'm sure you did, but I don't believe I agree that there is no feasible or reasonable use for the property on this one issue. I don't believe it's an unnecessary hardship. It may seem like a hardship to you. I don't know that it's unnecessary. Ordinances that we pass and put on the books are designed for a certain reason, and we changed ours for good reason. And that's the public policy we want to follow. The ordinance is the way it should be, and that's why you want a variance. It's written in the public's interest. So this is not against the public interest. It's just you disagree with what we did. I think the biggest question I have is, and I think you said, I was confused about what you said about the federal government, but for you to not permit a full-time student to rent this. It just doesn't sit well with me, and I'm not so sure. Did you say that? I can't imagine the federal government saying that.
Could I start with
What if I'm a family member and then I decide to go to school full-time? Do I have to move?
You must have at least one resident that's not a full-time student living in the apartment. So it can't be all full-time. So a single mom and her children who are full-time students can live there. But you can't have,
Because of the children.
right, but you can't have all residents being full-time
So
students.
really, what are we talking about total in one unit? How many people?
Typically, well, we have 2 and 3 bedroom units, and we assume 3 to 4 people per
Okay,
unit.
so as long as one of them is not a full-time student, or they could be a part-time student, I don't know. I haven't looked at these regulations.
They could
On
be a
paper,
part-time
it doesn't sound right to me to say, we're not going to allow full-time students. That doesn't sit well with our larger community, I don't think.
Yeah,
It doesn't with me. So
That's not my rule, that's a rule under the Tax Reform Act of 1986.
yeah, I understand, but the way you're putting in this application makes it sound pretty strict, like, you know, and I don't know if I want to be a party to that. There is a need, of course, for affordable housing, we know that, but, so some of this, I have a lot of questions about it, and I'm not sure I'm ready to make a decision. You're probably in a hurry you wouldn't want us to postpone this, but I think you still have some options that can fit with our ordinance that was changed and is on the books in the public's interest. And it's maybe not in your interest, but that's how I have to look at it for the public. So I do appreciate your being here, and Mr. Mayor, thank you for the time.
Julia, did you have a comment?
If I may, could I talk to your first point about the alternative uses and just give a little more background on that? The financing that we're using here is housing tax credits. It's administered through the South Dakota Housing Development Authority. They have one funding round per year, comes up in August, and if you don't meet that, you wait until the next year. And it's a competitive process. It's the same program that we developed Phase 1 under. I'm sure you've driven by Madison Park Phase 1, beautiful apartments. But the reason that we're trying not to change the use is because if we change the number of units or the unit mix, we have to go back and reapply. And there's no guarantee that we'll receive the funding from South Dakota Housing. So much of our request ties into the fact that we're using a specialty type of funding to bring a special type of housing to Vermillion that's on a limited application cycle.
Julia, please.
Thank you very much for being here, and I hear a lot of what Tom is saying. I think that we made these ordinances for a reason, and that we want to make sure that, you know, we are following those and that, you know, people are not getting variances willy-nilly, as many of my other members know. What I am thinking, though, is that this is 2 separate complexes that are joined, and so there would be a difference, a discrepancy then between the 2 of them, meaning that people who live on the south side have different kind of parking than the people who live on the north side. And so I appreciate actually and really James was very diplomatic about this, but the kind of willingness to be more consistent in the 2 complexes. And I think that's actually a good idea. And in terms of the point, and I don't think it matters as much, but I do appreciate working on grants-funded projects. I think affordable housing, particularly for families, is something that we need and something that we would want in the Northeast Ward particularly. And
Southeast.
so
I think isn't it the southeast?
it's in the south. It's right on the border, I think.
It's north of Clark Street.
It's north
South
of
of Cherry.
Yeah, it's north
Southeast
of Clark
Cherry and
Street.
Novak.
It's by Roosevelt. I was just walking past there the other day. And so for me, it's about a consistency. I don't think this is something I would be willing to do a variance if it was a brand-new complex. But for consistency's sake, for the people who are living there, I think I would approve of this variance.
Rich, please.
I make it a practice to try my best to attend all the planning and zoning meetings as well as these meetings, but I have to be honest, I don't recall the logic behind this. You say it's sure it's for a good reason. I don't know what the reason would be. I don't feel it would apply to what this gentleman is asking for at all. So I really question why we chose to not count garages, which are technically a parking place. I believe in the ordinance, it does say you must use a garage for a garage. So that being said, it's a parking place. So I question why we did it in the first place. Now, I apologize if I one time knew and have forgotten since, but I don't recall it.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay?
Sure.
Howard, please.
Well, to answer your question, Rich, one of the reasons was that we find that with a lot of the students, they use the garage as a storage unit rather than a parking space, and that's what we put this ordinance into effect. And I guess my question is to you is, do you know or aware of a lot of your tenants using the garage as a storage unit rather than a parking area?
May I? I know tenants use garages for storage units, just like we all use our garages for storage units. We've got bikes and toys and lawnmowers. Now, during the winter, I think that changes a little bit. People clean up, so mom can pull in and get into the garage and get out of the snow. But as far as how many people use their garages for storage spaces, I can't comment on that, but I can comment on the parking needs from Phase 1, which is, as far as the unit composition, is identical to Phase 2. It's an equal mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units. We performed a parking census over a 2-week period and found that a good majority of the surface spaces throughout the project were unoccupied throughout the day. And that has a more concrete, of course, has a environmental impact and a human impact. And if we're able to create green space throughout the project, which we have a little bit in Phase 1. You know, it's not a park by any means, but we have a nice play area and some nice lawn areas. It's better for the tenants. And I think through the parking census that we did at Phase 1, we demonstrated that parking under the prior code is adequate for this class of housing development.
Anyone else on the council? Go ahead.
Okay, so this parking study that you finished up, it was from June 24th through July 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked like there's 14, 11, 16, 14 on down extra spaces per day or per time. Do you think that that has to do with students, like students being gone for the summer, or how much of your percentage of housing is students?
Again, I wish I knew the numbers on that. I'm not sure that we track. I know that 100% of our units have at least one person who's not a full-time student. I can say that with certainty. Our development, we don't have a lot of student households. Students tend to be single people that group together and they're with other students, really. Our developments are family developments. We've got single parents or starter families or young professional families. We don't have many students. It's mostly families.
Before you have a second turn, I'd like to comment and agree with what Julia had to say, and that is, I think it's a unique situation. It isn't just open apartments like we have in other parts of the town, and I think it's consistent with what we have there, and so I'd be in favor of the variance. Tom?
This survey that was brought up, we're talking about 9 days in the summertime, late June and the first few days of July. But I just thought I'd point that out, whether you think it's really accurate or not. The other thing is that it brings up the question, how do you track who all lives there, and how do you know they aren't all full-time students? I mean, I don't know. Do you check with the registrar, or do you, I'm not so sure. And again, you knew that March 22nd was a significant date, and that's like 5 months ago.
Yeah, these things take years in planning. We've been planning this for 3 years, really. So the March 22nd day was significant, I agree. But our funding was approved. We applied last August for our funding. So it was.
I'm sensitive to that. I did appreciate you pointing out that you were trying to at least relieve the drainage, because drainage is always a problem, especially in that area. That was a very flooded area this past spring, in that entire area. So I appreciated your attempts to try to alleviate some of that. So
Yeah, and I think that could be one justification to approve the variance, that there are, everything's wet around here, so it's hard to say that it's unique to our site, but it is something that hinders the development of the site. Dealing with drainage, you end up doing backflips trying to figure out how to sheet all the water off a 4-acre site that's, if we meet the current parking code, is going to be covered in concrete. The whole thing is going to be concrete and buildings, very little on it.
Other comments from the council? Rich? Okay, we have a motion to approve. We have a motion and a second to approve. Further discussion? We'll try this. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no old business this evening, so we'll turn to new business. And the first item is a master license agreement for Verizon for use of the right-of-way for small cell equipment. And John, please.
Thank you. This is another step in the process. A couple months ago, you did approve Ordinance 1402, which basically was your policy. You established the framework for small cell infrastructure in the community. And at that time, we noted that you would adopt an ordinance, which, if you will, sets the policy, the guidance for how small cell will be deployed within our respective community. From there, we noted that there'd be a master license agreement, and the master license agreement is really bringing that language of the ordinance home to a relationship with a particular vendor. It's, if you will, taking those things in the policy and putting them in an agreement that you have with the business. And so we have been working with Verizon, the city attorney and staff, and Verizon representatives, both in person and on phone. We worked together to develop the master license agreement, which is attached here in your packet. For the most part, what's in that master license agreement is what you approved when you adopted Ordinance 1402. It's just putting those terms there. The additional terms that I would maybe note is that the master license agreement is for a 15-year term. So basically, you're saying, I'm picking on Verizon here because they are the applicant and that's the one before you. Verizon, here's the ordinance, and we agree to work under these terms and conditions for the next 15 years. And then there is an option to renew that for another additional 15 years. That's then bringing that ordinance to your relationship. And then the next step is to actually submit an application for that particular site or sites around the community. And that's what would take place next. Would it be, and it does call for that. And the actual license for a specific site is for a 10-year term. So you have two different terms that are there. Any fees that are referenced are covered by the ordinance and the resolution that you adopted with that. So basically, I would also note that this one's a little bit unique. This is our first time going through this. So in a matter of fairness to any other providers that might come forward, the terms and conditions you adopt with this one will likely be very similar to the terms and conditions you're going to adopt for other subsequent carriers who might come forward, just as a matter of fairness and treating all applicants equally. So based on the review and the partnership we've had with Verizon working this out, the city attorney's review, I would recommend approval of the master license agreement with Verizon.
Thank you, John.
I should mention there's also representatives here to answer questions and offer comments.
Do you want to have anything to say before we open it to the council, or what's your preference?
Just that we're happy to be here tonight. Jeff Armour and Sarah Muley out of the Omaha office. We've gotten to know you guys pretty good, and I think John, as usual, did an excellent job of reiterating where we're at and our partnership working together to get to this point. The master license agreement simply is called for in your ordinance. The ordinance requires that we enter into one of these, and this just sets out a lot of those same terms and provides for that agreement and certainty on both sides of the table.
May I just ask for clarification in the part that John mentioned as the master license agreement for 15 years and then another potential 15, where the other is 10 years and then only 1 year at a time after that?
That would be for the per site license
So that's annual then?
after the initial term.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I didn't misread that. Okay. Comments, questions? Rich?
More curiosity than anything else, why did we make two different terms? We have a 15-year agreement and then a 10-year on the other. Seems like there always be a constant overlap or not consistency from one to the other. I would think it'd either be a 10-year master plan or a 15-year location plan.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
Is there a reason for that?
So some of that overlap is by design, and you'll see a lot of carriers ask for that, partly so that the term of the technology tends to be 10 years, and it's so when we, if you look at the 3G, the 4G, 5G, it tends to go in 10-year increments. So that allows us some certainty to permit a site under the 15-year lease agreement or license agreement within your ordinance, and then have that site last for 10 years. So if it's terminated under the ordinance is changed, we still have some certainty for that site that we've invested a lot of time in, not only our side of the table, but also yours. So that's why it's different per site as far as the overarching agreement.
Looking at it from that point of view, which I hadn't considered, the technology's changed much faster than 10 years, don't they, really?
What we've seen is it's generally been 10 years before the next really rollout, and then it takes several years for that to actually be proliferated. So,
It feels like it's constant, but
Yeah.
well, technology doesn't wait for anybody.
That's true.
That's for certain.
thank you.
Comments, other comments, questions? Tom?
Just for the sake of discussion, and since you drove so far, thanks for being here, I appreciate it.
Certainly.
If a competitor of yours were standing here in your shoes and helping the city do their first draft of a contract like this, would you feel comfortable, or would you, this is, I understand that Verizon doesn't want anybody else to get anything they can't have. I mean, this has got to be, according to law, it's got to be pretty much the same for everybody, but you've had a good hand in helping the city draft this, I think, right?
Well, I think that we would take the same attitude industry-wise that we've taken when we've negotiated the South Dakota Municipal League. I mean, our attorneys worked hand in hand with our competitors to negotiate that. The maturation of that was kind of what you saw John take from the Sioux Falls model, which was what we kind of saw here in place today. So industry-wide, we're transparent, we're an open book, and the city equally has a duty to treat all carriers equal. So I think any industry input is good input.
Thank you for answering that. It's a question I simply had to ask. Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Pleasure of the council.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the master license agreement with Verizon for small cell. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item B, a permit for consumption but not sale of alcoholic beverages for local fare at the fair, sponsored by the Vermillion Area Farmers Market on Friday, August 9, 2019, from 3 to 6 p.m. at the Fairgrounds Metal Building west of High Street. And Mike, please.
Grace Freeman, on behalf of the Vermillion Area Farmers Market, had put in a request at a permit for consumption of alcoholic beverages on public property for a sampling of local wine and beer at the local fair at the fair sampling event. That will be on August 9th from 3 to 6 in the Metal Building west of High Street. A copy of her request for the event is attached in the packet. The City Council may permit the consumption but not sale of alcoholic beverages on property owned by the public. This is city property that is leased to Clay County for the fairgrounds. Administration would recommend approval of the special permit to allow consumption but not sale on August 9th at the fair. This, I think, is the third year for this event, and we have not heard any issues with the prior events.
Thank you, Mike. Do we have anything from the police on this?
No, I didn't request anything since we hadn't in the past, just for a sampling.
Okay. Anyone in the audience wants to discuss this idea?
Let's see, Greg. I've
Turn
got
to
a
the
quick
council.
question for Mike. Is there a limit on the number of samples?
At a time.
Or the size? The size?
Yeah, right.
State statute lists the number of ounces. I think wine, you can have up to, is it 2 ounces, and malt beverage, it might be 3 ounces. They're supposed to limit the number of samples that they give to any individual with, but yet it doesn't say specifically how many.
Motion to second to approve the permit. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item C, street closure request to remove parking on Dakota Street from Alumni Street to South Dakota Highway 50, and to close Rose Street from Coyote Village to the Sanford Coyote Sports Center for this year's USD home football games on August 31, September 14, October 5, October 26, November 9, and November 23, 2019, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And Jolly? Oh. Oh, okay. I don't recognize you without your beard.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so Mayor Jack did a great job of going through what we're requesting here. Cameron Wilson with the athletic department, for those who don't know me, requesting to have UPD barricade off Dakota Street from Alumni Street north to the Highway 50 bypass. This is to help with those pedestrians parking in the grass lot between the foundation and the Holiday Inn, crossing the streets, mostly for pedestrian safety. We also use some of that area to park our visiting team buses as well as a visiting team equipment truck there along Dakota Street. The other request being allowing UPD to barricade off Rose Street from Coyote Village to the Sanford Coyote Sports Center for those students that are crossing the street, Rose Street, heading over to what was the student tailgate over in that grass area, again, for just pedestrian safety.
This is the same we've done for...
Correct, yep, as long as I've been here the past 2 years, so.
Council? Motion to second to approve the street closures for the football games. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Cameron. Item D, request to close Kidder Street from Market Street to Court Street for the Dakota Days Street Dance and Pep Rally on October 3rd, 2019, from 5:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. And now, Jolly?
Nice. I was going to ask if we wanted to do this one too, but he left.
He got out of here.
The Dakota Days Committee will be hosting a pep rally and street dance on October 3rd from 5:30 to 11, and the requested closure is now Kidder Street from Market Street to Court Street. And I've asked and notified the request to police, fire, EMS, and the street departments, and they've all given the go-ahead on this. And businesses located on the closure have also been notified by Doug Wagner, and they've also given the go-ahead to close Kidder Street. And the Dakota Days Committee will be planning on cleaning the event as soon as it's done at 11 p.m. on October 3rd. So therefore, we recommend that the City Council approve the street closings for the aforementioned street location of Kidder Street from Market to Court Street from 5:30 to 11 p.m. on October 3rd, 2019. So this is a new location based on from last year, which was on Radigan Plots, but there weren't any concerns for this year. So.
Okay, thank you. Council?
I have a quick question, if you don't mind.
Jolly?
Did you say the businesses are notified along there? Can you tell me what businesses those are?
Char is on that, Char Lounge, to be more formal. But there's also, across the street, there's the dentist, or the dentistry.
Is the what?
The dentistry on the other side of the street of Kidder.
Okay.
Used to be a bank.
Their addresses are not Kidder, but their businesses are along Kidder, like Old Lumber Company, right?
Or OLC, sorry. OLC, not Charcoal Lounge, but
Yeah.
they have been notified, and Doug
Yeah.
Wagner has stated that they didn't
think
offer any
they-
concerns to the notification, so.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry about that, but yeah.
Council, did we have anything yet?
Second.
Motion is second to approve the closure. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item E, presentation, Can we have a recess here? Presentation of the 2020 budget proposal. And John, please.
Thank you. This is really sort of a team effort, and I really appreciate all the work of the department heads and our employees in putting together a proposed budget to help the council begin the discussion as to what it is that you'll adopt for a budget for 2020. The development of this goes all the way back to in the springtime of this year when we were talking about the capital improvements plan, the feedback we get on that, citizen input, council input we get, and then we combined all that together to develop the document. I guess in terms of a prop, for the people wondering at home, it's probably, I don't know how to best to show this. This would be their homework assignment. It's probably 2 inches thick or close to it.
6 pounds.
6 pounds, okay. So they're hoping to get an A. No. But they do, you should receive your electronic copy if that's the way you want to receive it. Also the paper copy. Depends on how you'd like to receive that. I would just note a couple of things in this budget that's before you. In the proposal, there are no rate increases for electric, water, sanitary, sewer, or the curbside recycling program. The only rate increase that's proposed is for our stormwater management program, the amount that we have that goes for stormwater improvements. We have a couple of staffing changes. One or two, or I should say two, are to restore positions that we've had in the past, to bring those back, and then also to convert a part-time position at the library to a full-time youth library assistant to help with some of the needs we have there. I guess there's a couple projects that are pretty major, maybe a little bit more noticeable in the community. We hope, this has been a long-time project, that maybe next year will be the year that we're able to replace the hike-bike path along the Vermillion River. That's been an ongoing project. I'm not going to hold my breath on that one, but hopefully we'll make that happen. We have continuing work on the Prentice Master Plan for the Prentice Park. Next year we're looking at some pathway lighting as it goes north and along Clark Street. Some work on the historic arches to do some renovation work with those. Some other park improvements that I know, one of the larger ones is to do some renovation work to the Lions campground over in the northwest part of the city. Next year would be the third year of our AMI, which is the automated meter infrastructure for both water and electricity. So we'd have the third year of that. And probably one of the most notable projects, I would say, we may not see construction take place, but there'd be a whole lot of planning, some bid specs developed, those sorts of things, would be for a downtown project. And so we do have a consideration for the council to look at putting aside some money on a second penny to help with that, and for a 2021 construction project that way. I guess the next step, I'm glad it's finally off my desk. I've been living with this thing for too long, but now it's to you to begin the discussions on August 14th and 15th, that Wednesday and Thursday of next week at 5:30 p.m. The City Council will have your budget meetings where you'll start going through this document and developing a proposal that then would come forward in September via the form of an ordinance, and you consider adopting ordinance during the month of September to establish a budget for 2020. So no action is needed at this point in time. This is fulfilling a state requirement that you receive your budget at your first meeting in August.
Would you do what you've done in the last several years, you and Mike, give us guidance as to what's coming up which night?
Oh, yes, thank you. You will not find there in your book yet the schedule, but you'll get that probably within the next day or so, so you'll know what you need to cram for Wednesday night's meetings and what's going to be on Thursday nights. So, yes, thank you. It was on my list of things here, but yeah, we'll get that to you the next day or so.
Any comments or questions? Tom?
Make it quick, because I say this every year. Setting budgets is our job as a board in setting policy for this city. Yes, we can add some words or do some things to ordinances, but the budget is the policy. Here's where we're putting our money where our mouth is. And I assume these, even though for us, are open to the public, because we'll be hearing from each of the department chairs, et cetera. This is a very informative time. It's always in August. And the public needs to know that they're welcome.
They are open meetings, that's absolutely right.
Thank you.
And we have had people on occasion sit in on them. Yes. Julia?
I just want to ask John formally if the Chamber of Commerce has been invited and given notice.
Theirs is right now scheduled for the noon meeting on August 19th, Monday, August 19th.
Okay, thank you.
So after budget.
It's after the meetings next week, but before you adopt your ordinance. So it's before formal adoption.
We weren't able to find time for it in 2 days.
I honestly haven't looked at the schedule. Marty's been working at that.
I would prefer that, when we were in that meeting looking at it, it would be good.
But that's also open to the public?
You don't have any meetings that aren't open to the public, so they're all
Okay.
open to the public.
Including this other one?
Yeah, in all of our meetings. Unless we have a couple of reasons we can go executive, but otherwise our meetings are all open. Okay, thank you, John. Next, our bid openings. Mike, with fuel quotes, please.
The fuel quote sheet should be sitting in
Fuel
front of you and
quotes
is
are
on your monitor. And the first is for unleaded gasoline with 10% ethanol. First bid from Stern Oil, $2.16.98. Unleaded gasoline regular, $2.56.76. Item 3, number 2, diesel fuel dyed, $2.06.12. And item 4, number 2, diesel fuel clear, $2.35.77. Second quote was from Brunick Service on item 1, $2.20. Item 2, $2.60. Item 3, $2.09. Item 4, $2.41. Stern Oil will be low on all 4.
Council? Motion is second to accept the low bids. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item B, bid opening for miscellaneous concrete. Shane, please.
Thank you. The city has an ongoing program to update all of the handicap ramps throughout the city. This program was instituted a couple years ago and designates funds for the handicap ramp improvements. In addition to the handicap improvements, this project also repairs curbs and gutter, as well as storm sewer inlets that have been damaged in the prior winter. Bids were opened on July 24th. The city sent requests to 5 different contractors and 4 plan houses. From those requests, we received 2 bids. The low bid was from M&M Construction in the amount of $89,833.44. The other bid that we received was from Walker Construction in the amount of $93,289.86. The city's estimate on this project this year was $103,000. Bidding is required by state law whenever the cost of the project is estimated to exceed $50,000 like this one was. This project specifically consists of performing several different pavement repairs throughout the city, a large repair on the Crawford Hill Trail, and several repairs to the storm sewer system. This project will be paid for through several different funds due to the areas that are going to be worked on. Administration recommends awarding the project to M&M Construction for the amount of $89,833.44.
Thank you, Shane. Council? Motion is second to approve the miscellaneous concrete project. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item C is bid opening for the tire hauling and recycling services. And again, Shane, please.
Thank you. South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DNR, awarded the city with an $80,000 80/20 grant for the waste tire collection program for portions of Clay County and Yankton County. The grant allows residents to dispose of tires at the landfill or different transfer stations at no cost to them. The way it works is the city pays for the entire cost of the project, and then 80% of that cost is reimbursed to the city at the end of the project or once it is completed. But bids were opened on July 24th, 2016. 2016 is not right. It was definitely 2019. The city sent requests for bids to 4 contractors. From those requests, the city received 3 bids. However, only one of those bids had the correct bid security, so we could not read the other 2. The low bid was received from Liberty Tire Services of Ohio, LLC, doing business as Liberty Tire Recycling, LLC of Savage, Minnesota, in the amount of $78,000. Like I said before, the city will pay for the entire project out of the Joint Powers Landfill Fund, and then DNR will reimburse us 80% of that cost. Administration recommends awarding the bid to Liberty Tire Services of Ohio, LLC, doing business as Liberty Tire Recycling, LLC of Savage, Minnesota, for $78,000.
Thank you, Shane. Council? Motion is second to approve. All in favor, I'm sorry.
I was just wondering what our estimate was and if it was worth taking another look at it since the other two were not able to be opened.
I do not know what the estimate was on this one. I know that the $80,000, we kind of assumed it would be right around that mark.
Okay, so we're comfortable with
Yeah,
this one
I think so,
regardless? Okay, thank you.
Now, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks, Shane. Next is our city manager's report. John, please.
Well, just a reminder, in case you've forgotten, you do have 2 budget meetings coming up next week on August 14th and 15th.
Keep saying that.
I'm just,
Yeah, right.
just the Historic Preservation Commission, they are meeting this Wednesday, August 7th, and then it'll be in the Memorial Room just to the west of here in the second floor of City Hall at 9 a.m. A reminder that the Clay County Fair is this week, and High Street will be closed from the bus barn north to Cherry Street, and that's to help as fair patrons are going back and forth to the respective items crossing the street there. So the closure of High Street begins at 7 a.m. on Thursday morning, August 8th, and lasts until 10 a.m. on Sunday, August 11th. That's to allow time for setup and then also cleanup following the conclusion of all the events. So those were the main things. And then while he did age while he was here, this is also Jolly Omar's last week with us here. He has threatened to come back for budget meetings. See, people want to be there to see how that part of the process works. He's helped us put that together. But Jolly will be a second-year MPA student at USD coming up here in a matter of a couple weeks. And a Sioux Falls native, and we've enjoyed having him here and appreciate all the work he's done. And I think he's done a nice job coming and presenting before our city council. So thank you, Jolly.
You're welcome anytime. Next item is invoices payable. Any? Yes, please.
I'd like to abstain from when the circumstances beyond our control, we had to replace our air conditioning unit 4th of July weekend.
Oh, what a good time.
After 4th of July.
Move approval, item 1. Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 1. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now what?
Move the rest of the bills? Yeah, second.
Motion and second to pay the rest of our bills, I think is what they're saying. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Consensus agenda. Set a public hearing date of August 19, 2019 for a special daily malt beverage and wine license for the Fraternal Order of Eagles on or about October 4, 2019 for a fenced-in designated area at 429 North Plum Street. And a second one. Set a public hearing date of August 19, 2019 for a special daily malt beverage and wine license for the Vermillion Area Arts Council on or about September 14th for a steampunk pirate festival at 202 Washington Street. If anybody could please tell me what a steampunk pirate festival is before I...
This was a pirate, obviously.
Well, what's the steampunk part of it?
I will require a presentation.
A demonstration or?
I have a flyer that will be included with the license application from the Arts Council
All right.
that explains what it's all about.
I just wanted clarification whether this Eagle thing is at Julie's house.
Move approval of the consensus agenda.
Motion and second to approve the consensus agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries, Tom.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We're adjourned. Thank you.